In 1936, the Japanese author Taro Hirai, writing under the pseudonym Edogawa Ranpo, introduced readers to a captivating character known as the Fiend with 20 Faces in a young adult mystery novel. This mysterious figure, a master of disguise, thief, and villain, engaged in a thrilling game of wits with the hero detective Kogoro Akechi. Possessing remarkable intelligence, the Fiend executed intricate schemes, manipulative maneuvers, and playful wordplay, challenging Akechi at every turn. While Akechi held a certain admiration for the Fiend, he remained steadfast in his determination to thwart the villain's plans, ensuring the safety of the public. Fast forward to 1984, 48 years later, when Japan found itself gripped by fear as real-life threats emerged from an individual or group adopting a name and tactics reminiscent of the Fiend. Dubbed the Monster with 21 Faces, these criminals struck terror into the hearts of both businesses and the public with their ruthless acts of violence. Unlike the fictional Fiend who maintained a code of honor by refraining from murder and instead challenging individuals to confront their inner demons, the Monster showed no hesitation in resorting to brutality and intimidation. In this chilling saga, the distinction between fiction and reality blurs as the adversaries confronting society are all too tangible. Despite any begrudging admiration for their audacious feats and cunning tactics, detectives, law enforcement, and the general public harbor no respect for these villains, recognizing them for the true threats they pose to peace and safety. This is the Monster with 21 Faces. Between March 18, 1984 and August 12, 1985, the Monster with 21 Faces orchestrated a series of intricate attacks, targeting numerous entities including esteemed candy manufacturers Ezaki Glico Company Limited and Morinaga and Company Limited. These assaults led the police to dub the case as the glico-morinaga case, while the Tokyo Metropolitan Police classified it as Metropolitan Designated Case 114. Throughout the ordeal, the Monster with 21 Faces brazenly communicated with businesses, law enforcement, and the public through a series of taunting letters, both directly and indirectly. The saga began with a kidnapping and concluded tragically with a loss of life, leaving behind an unresolved mystery that continues to baffle investigators. At 9 p.m. on March 18, 1984, two masked assailants armed with a pistol and rifle forcibly entered the Nishinomiya residence in Hyogo Prefecture, belonging to Yoshie Ezaki, a 70-year-old woman who happened to be the mother of Katsuhisa Ezaki, the 42-year-old president of Ezaki Glico. The house, situated on a lavish residential estate adjacent to her son's mansion, boasted a security system known only to Yoshie, a fact the perpetrators seemed well aware of. After forcing her to surrender the key, they bound her with tape and a telephone cord. Meanwhile, Katsuhisa Ezaki was taking a bath, while his 4-year-old daughter Yukiko and 11-year-old son Etsuro slept nearby, undisturbed by the intruders. Remarkably, the assailants refrained from harming his awake 8-year-old daughter Mariko and his 35-year-old wife Mikieko, despite Mikieko's attempt to offer them money, which they dismissed as inconsequential. Instead, they bound the remaining family members with telephone cords and confined them to a bathroom. Subsequently, the criminals transported Ezaki, naked and trembling, to a secluded warehouse in nearby Ibaraki, Osaka Prefecture, where they held him captive, bound with ropes. Shortly before midnight, they dispatched Glico's director to a designated phone booth, where he discovered a note outlining their ransom demands: 100 kilograms or 220 pounds of gold bullion and 1 billion yen, approximately $4.3 million. However, their plans to obtain these illicit funds were foiled when Ezaki managed to escape his captors just 3 days into his ordeal. Ezaki provided scant details to the officers at the local Koshien police station, recalling only that his captors had kept a bag over his head, fed him intermittently, and issued threats, claiming to have one of his daughters in the same warehouse. He also harbored a belief that the firearms brandished by the perpetrators were merely toys, not genuine weapons. On April 8, 1984, a typed letter landed at the station, berating the police as fools, deriding their professionalism and flaunting the writer's culpability in the kidnapping. The letter, providing corroborative evidence of their involvement, emphasized their non-affiliation with Ezaki's kin or law enforcement, detailing the getaway car's color and the supermarket from which Ezaki's provisions were procured. The missive insinuated that the police were akin to tax thieves and hinted at extracting more information through coercion, even proposing the kidnapping of the prefectural police director to expedite their compliance. Subsequently, on April 10th, news outlets received letters prior to an arson attack targeting vehicles near Glico's headquarters. Then, on April 16th, a threatening communique accompanied by a plastic container filled with hydrochloric acid surfaced at a separate Ibaraki Glico facility. By April 23rd, prominent newspapers and law enforcement agencies received further missives, wherein the writer scorned the police anew, accusing them of concealing the truth regardless of the investigation's progress. Offering additional clues about their identity and capabilities, they insinuated the potential for malicious acts employing readily available materials, dismissing the container of acid as mere street garbage. These communiques, signed Kaijin Nijiichi Menso, stoked public apprehension, propagating a pervasive sense of vulnerability to random acts of violence. Initially translated as the Mystery Man or the Phantom with 21 faces, the name bore resemblance to Edogawa Ranpo's character, ultimately leading law enforcement to christen the perpetrator as the Monster with 21 Faces. On May 10, 1984, the Monster with 21 Faces instilled terror in every parent, grandparent, and guardian with a new series of letters directed at Glico and the media. In these communiques, they chillingly asserted that Glico candy had been laced with lethal potassium cyanide. Consumption of these tainted treats would unleash deadly hydrogen cyanide gas, prompting Glico to take swift action. The company recalled all its products, including the beloved Pocky chocolate, and laid off hundreds of employees. The financial toll was staggering, with approximately $21 million worth of products pulled from shelves, 3 times the ransom demanded for Ezaki, and a staggering $130 million in lost sales. Remarkably, a few weeks later, on June 26th, the Monster abruptly ceased its campaign of terror against Glico without ever receiving a ransom payment. They declared absolution for the company's purported transgressions, citing their inability to deprive a child in their group of Glico candies any longer. They even mused about taking a hiatus to travel, indulging in Pocky as a treat along the way. However, the Monster with 21 Faces continued to menace other food companies. By September, they turned their sights on Tokyo-based Morinaga, resorting to a combination of letters, threats, and violent actions in an attempt to extort the company. When Morinaga stood firm against their demands, the Monster sent a letter to Osaka news outlets in October, addressed to the moms of the nation. In this communique, the Monster claimed to have added a special flavor to certain Morinaga treats, ominously noting that potassium cyanide is a little bitter. They threatened to distribute 20 poison packages across Japan, each labeled with a warning. To demonstrate their resolve, they even sent a letter containing 30 grams of sodium cyanide to Morinaga's Osaka location. By November 1st, Mitsuo Yamada, a vice president of Morinaga Dairy, received a letter from the Monster in which they demanded a ransom of 200 million yen under the threat of destroying the company and harming Yamada and others. The Monster instructed Yamada to respond through a specific newspaper's missing persons section, using a message containing specific words. Refusing to comply with the Monster's demands, Morinaga crafted a coded response, omitting certain keywords and instead sending a message reading, "Dear Jiro, bad friend disappeared. Come back. Warm meal is waiting. Mother Chiyoko." Despite the ongoing correspondence, law enforcement struggled to locate the poisoned sweets, and Morinaga faced dire consequences. The tainted products represented 90% of their production line, resulting in staggering financial losses and irreparable damage to the company's reputation. During the Ezaki kidnapping, authorities enforced a media blackout to prevent the kidnappers from gaining notoriety and potentially harming their hostage. The depth of knowledge exhibited by the monster with 21 faces about Ezaki's security measures led investigators to suspect a personal connection to the Ezaki family or their property. Despite setting up roadblocks and conducting a meticulous regional search, law enforcement failed to identify any suspects. While Glico managed to thwart the monster's attempts to use their products for nefarious purposes, police discovered lethal doses of cyanide in Morinaga angel pies and choco balls. Each tainted package bore a typed label warning of the poison, attributed to the mystery man with 21 faces. Subsequent letters from the monster threatened future packages with no warning labels. Fortunately, no poisonings or fatalities occurred. However, as Valentine's Day approached in February 1985, the monster extended its threats to other confectionery and snack companies, including Lot and Meiji, though no tainted packages from these brands were ever found. The last of 21 poisoned Morinaga packages was recovered that same month. Throughout 1984 and 1985, investigators scoured countless letters for clues, even releasing an audio recording of blackmail by the monster featuring a woman and child's voices. Despite efforts to engage the public in the manhunt and pursue leads on potential suspects, law enforcement found themselves no closer to resolution. As frustration mounted and public criticism intensified, a tragic event halted the monster's reign of terror. On August 7, 1985, Soji Yamamoto, a 59-year-old former police superintendent in Shiga Prefecture, who had been demoted and reassigned due to his perceived failure to apprehend a suspected mastermind, succumbed to despair. Tormented by mocking taunts from the monster and public skepticism, Yamamoto tragically took his own life by self-immolation. In response, on August 12, the monster issued a final letter, initially ridiculing Yamamoto's demise and implying his incompetence. They hinted at the correct locations for their hideouts and targets before announcing a cessation of their torment of food companies, attributing any future letters to copycats. They signed off as bad guys who found pleasure in leading a life of mischief. Despite the emergence of copycats in the aftermath, the monster with 21 faces ceased all communications thereafter, leaving behind a legacy of fear and uncertainty that lingered for years to come. It's crucial to emphasize that the police were not incompetent and indeed pursued several promising leads that nearly led to the apprehension of one or more suspects. Notably, during the Glico incidents, a security camera at a store captured footage of a mysterious individual wearing a baseball cap leaving Glico chocolate on a shelf. This critical evidence assisted law enforcement in early stages of the investigation, enabling them to follow leads and validate the presence of cyanide. This individual was dubbed the videotaped man by the police when the image was shared with the public. By June 28, 1984, shortly after the monster announced the conclusion of its Glico campaign, law enforcement was on the verge of capturing the suspected mastermind behind the scheme. The monster had attempted to extort 50 million yen from the Marudai Ham Food Company. Disguised as a company employee en route to a designated money drop location, an investigator noticed a suspicious individual with fox-like eyes, closely observing their surroundings. This individual, sporting short, permed hair, sunglasses, and a physique resembling the videotaped man, drew attention from several other investigators that day. Unfortunately, they were unable to detain or question him. On November 14, 1984, during a separate 100 million yen money drop for the House Food Corporation in Shiga Prefecture, the same individual was spotted by police investigators. Despite the significance of this encounter, the money drop did not proceed as planned, and the suspect evaded capture once again. Subsequently, investigators surmised that the failed drop may have been a deliberate test of police responsiveness. They learned that a patrol officer, unaware of the planned drop, had encountered a driver fitting the description of a thin-cheeked man in his 40s with a wireless receiver in a parked station wagon earlier that day. Upon being approached, the driver fled, prompting a pursuit by the patrol officer. Although the vehicle was eventually found abandoned, the police recovered a receiver capable of intercepting official radio communications from 6 prefectures. In January 1985, following the public release of an artist's rendering of the Fox-Eyed Man, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police identified a criminal and alleged Yakuza member named Manabu Miyazaki as the potential mastermind. Miyazaki had been linked to Glico-related whistleblower and union leader fraud cases in 1975 and 1976. Additionally, recordings from 1976 featured Miyazaki discussing a Glico labor dispute, mirroring themes present in the monster's letters. Furthermore, Miyazaki bore a striking resemblance to the Fox-Eyed Man. Although investigations ultimately cleared Miyazaki due to solid alibis, some experts and historians speculate that he may have played a leadership or organizational role in the events. Initially, many individuals struggled to accept the malevolence of the monster with 21 faces, as the entity repeatedly rejected ransom offers and criticized corporate greed and police inefficiency. However, the monster's subsequent death threats and criminal activities dispelled any doubts regarding its nefarious intentions. Throughout the 17-month period of the monster's reign of terror, business owners, managers, and workers lived in constant fear of extortion and reprisal. Sales clerks remained vigilant, wary of potential terrorists who might surreptitiously introduce lethal confections onto their shelves. Meanwhile, parents and grandparents grappled with the looming specter of death, fearing that unsuspecting children could unwittingly consume tainted treats. Nevertheless, the public directed its blame elsewhere, holding law enforcement accountable for their perceived failures. An editorialist lamented in one newspaper that they could not recall a case in which criminals so thoroughly outmaneuvered the police. Having been conditioned by decades of fictional narratives portraying heroic detectives triumphing over villainy, the populace directed its frustration towards law enforcement agencies. The tragic death of Superintendent Yamamoto only fueled public outrage, sparking calls for accountability and retribution against officials for their inability to apprehend the monster. With hopes for more competent investigators to assume control, demands for police resignations and reassignments echoed throughout the community. In June 1994, Japanese law enforcement authorities lost their ability to pursue legal action against the kidnappers involved in the Izaki case. By February 13, 2000, marking 15 years since the last correspondence, the statute of limitations for charges related to attempted mass poisoning, murder, and all other crimes associated with the case had expired. Without new legislation, the police were powerless to bring charges against any individuals involved, even in the event of a confession. Yuji Ayura, an official with the National Police Agency, lamented this situation as a defeat, while Setsuo Tanaka, another NPA chief, expressed his disappointment at the failure to apprehend those responsible. Tanaka attempted to find a silver lining by suggesting that investigators could glean valuable lessons from the case for future endeavors. Over the course of 1984 to 1985, an estimated 20% of law enforcement personnel dedicated their efforts to the case, with at least 1 million officers involved in the investigation over the subsequent 15 years leading up to 2000. Authorities pursued leads on approximately 125,000 persons of interest and investigated over 28,000 tips. Despite heightened patrols and surveillance, particularly in areas retailing food products, no additional suspects emerged, nor did anyone come forward with information or confessions. The motives driving the monster with 21 faces remain a subject of speculation. Was there a personal vendetta against glico-morinaga, given the entity's seemingly intimate knowledge of these companies compared to other targets? Or perhaps political or economic motives were at play, potentially involving state actors like North Korea or individuals seeking financial gain through stock manipulation. Another possibility is that the actions of the monster were part of a larger agenda orchestrated by a criminal organization or extremist group. Considering the possibility that the monster harbored darker intentions beyond mere corporate bullying or police mockery, one might question whether comparisons to fictional characters like the Fiend with 20 Faces are apt. Could likening the monster to nefarious criminal mastermind Professor James Moriarty, the arch-nemesis of Sherlock Holmes and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's mystery novels, provide a more accurate depiction? Alternatively, could the monster's actions have been a demonstration of prowess aimed at recruiting other villains or nations through a dark sales pitch, akin to the exploits of characters like the Spider? These unanswered questions underscore the enduring enigma surrounding the monster with 21 faces and the complexity of its motivations and actions. Nearly 40 years later, the specter of the monster with 21 faces continues to both intrigue and unsettle society. Is its enduring grip on our collective consciousness due to its blurring of the line between fiction and reality? Or does it serve as a stark reminder of the latent malevolence lurking in the shadows? Many find it difficult to fathom that individuals would engage in widespread acts of evil simply out of boredom, insanity, or a sheer desire to inflict harm. The convergence of modern myths with real-world atrocities has muddled perceptions of crime and its perpetrators. Perhaps the allure of this saga lies in the fact that the monster with 21 faces executed what could be deemed a flawless crime. In a world devoid of the fantastical, superhuman detectives typified by characters like Akechi and Holmes, the lingering threat of the monster's resurgence looms ominously over Japan. It transcends mere mystery, evolving into an ongoing narrative of criminality, with its shadowy figures poised to re-emerge at any moment.